So let's talk for a minute about what are the components that are needed for a business partner to give you a cost estimate for your Maximo upgrade or implementation. We have another video talking about why it's complicated, but now we're going to actually talk about the components in there that drive that complication. So, as I've said before, Maximo is a product that covers dozens of industries, thousands of different use cases, and so this is going to be generic across all of those because the process is pretty much the same. And it's the details that you deliver to us as a business partner that really drive everything. So the first order of business is, well, how many organizations and sites do you have? Typically, organizations mean I have an account code structure change or I have a language change. And so for global organizations, that makes sense. They would have multiple. If you're only operating in one country, you probably have one. Sites within an organization are typically divided up because they might have a different set of books or they might be a different physical site, but they still roll up to the organization, and you can do things like view inventory across sites so that you can share inventory, you can send assets from site to site, things like that. So there's some sharing ability while by default you only see your own site. So how many of those do we have? That's going to give us an idea of how many stand-ups there are going to be right off the bat. Within that, how do you delineate the types of the roles of people in your organization? And this is going to translate into security groups within the application. And it's also going to that's kind of straightforward, but that also means we have to accommodate that in terms of workflow and everything else that is a decision tree type scenario within the product. Want to know what the rights should be for each one of those roles in the organization. And that helps us get that set up properly. And then what's the scope of use? So in Maximo terms, we have work orders, we have assets, we have locations, we have inventory and spare parts management, we have purchase requests, we have purchase orders, we have receiving, we have calibration, and the list is going to go on. Well over 100 applications, if you will, within the Maximo application suite. What are we going to use of those? And then from there, which of those will be integrated with another enterprise system? And we lay out integrations and say, well, we're going to, our asset register will be replicated to the financial system. We'll create a PR in Maximo, but the PO will come out of the purchasing system, and then we'll get that back. And it gets complex, and that ends up being scoped. We always define it by how many, count the arrowheads, like which way's the information moving, and a double arrowhead doubles the effort. So the integrations end up making things highly complex right there. And the next would be then, where's our data coming from? I mean, are you starting with a blank system? Probably not. So where's the data coming from, and what is the lift to make sure that that data is prepared to come into Maximo? Maximo is the best of breed system in this EAM CMMS world. It is very thorough in terms of what it captures about your assets and the management of them. And so oftentimes what we find is other systems don't have a complete data set. So we actually have to augment that data, which generally requires human intervention, in order to make it Maximo ready. Because Maximo has a ton of referential integrity rules that ensure that throughout the life cycle, all of your data is maintained for traceability and other general audit purposes. So just having the data oftentimes is not enough, but the data has to be made Maximo ready. So where's that data coming from? What's the quality of it? How are we going to get it into Maximo? And then based upon your business processes and practices, we're going to look at how workflow is configured and how the screens are configured, how the mobile application is configured to support that. And then based upon that, we'll come back and we'll say, okay, now, what do our dashboards, our Maximo Start Centers look like? What type of saved queries do we need to have in place so when you log in, you're seeing the data that you want to see? What type of printed, reports do we need? And then what type of more analytical reports do we need? And all of that is going to be a result of the processes and practices that we've put into place. And a lot of times what we see in scenarios like this is we'll get an answer, well, look, we've already got this system, so we kind of want to make sure Maximo does what that does. And my first response is, well, why are we changing systems if we want Maximo to do what the old one did? And it's like, well, that's not what I mean. We have some room for improvement, but here's the reality. If you're coming to Maximo and you're going through this process, you should be getting as much improvement as possible. And what we often see is in that process of improvement, we went from old system lagging indicators, what we did yesterday, to Maximo new system leading indicators. Dashboards completely change. Reporting metrics completely change because we've optimized processes, and so many of those legacy reports and dashboards were focused on gaps in process. When we clear that up, seal up all those gaps, we don't need any of that stuff anymore. Now what we need is some forward thinking, forward looking stuff. So there is a ton that goes into this. These are all the things that we need to cover in order to come back to you and give you a rough order of magnitude, a cost estimate of what's it going to take to upgrade or implement Maximo for you and make it do what you want it to do. So I know I threw a lot out there, and that undoubtedly is going to get some wheels turning, and there are going to be a lot of questions. So that's also why we're here to help. Reach out, give us a call, shoot us an email, sales@banetti.com. Let's solve this together. Get ready with Banetti.